Good afternoon. My name's Richard Mahony. I run the consulting business for Ovum. Now, I know we're running a little bit late, and you're probably a little bit hungry, but please stay with us because no one was going to get Stephen Carter off that stage. But I think we've had some really good sessions today. For me, one of the things that's I think we've heard from all our speakers has been a growing expectation of change in both technology and industry. So the question for us then is, what does this mean for the telco? What is the way ahead? And what if we ask ourselves, can we start driving more of this change rather than just being a casualty of it? So I thought I'd use my session to look at where we are as an industry today, but also set out some of the ways that we think the service provider can get ahead. What we know for sure is that the customer is going to get ever smarter. But what we mean by that is that their lives are going to get increasingly connected to and augmented with technology. And you quite reasonably think that these trends would have a positive impact on our industry. After all, more connections and more usage of those connections should drive more revenue growth. But as this chart from Forecaster shows, that over the next 5 years, whilst the industry will add an astonishing 1.75 billion connections, and network usage grows by 235%, revenue growth is a pitiful 7.5%. Whilst the internet companies continue to drive demand for connectivity, at the same time they grow their share of messaging, voice and TV to the detriment to industry revenues. And we think that this very small group of internet players will control over 30% market share in each of these categories by 2021. And we can't rely on speed to grow revenues. As this chart here shows, countries with the fastest networks do not command the highest prices. But in spite of these challenges, we think the industry this year will grow by 2%. And growth has been found in two places. The first is the continued growth of connectivity, and the second is through adding TV to broadband bundles. And there's a few examples here. There are lots that you can go and find, but Iliad and Comcast both reported 7% growth through TV bundling. LG Plus, not quite as good, but managed to do 2%. So it seems that the industry has finally established a working growth strategy through bundling. Fantastic. But we see the positive impact of bundling starting to diminish in a relatively short period of time. You probably didn't realize it, but 2016 was the year of peak bundle. We added 76 million bundled subscriptions. But this figure falls to 11 million by 2021, meaning that growth is going to be much harder to come by. To grow in the midterm, the industry is going to have to find new sources of revenue growth. The question is, where are these going to come from? In order to understand the future, let's first take a moment to step back and look at where we are today. Over the last 20 years, the internet has introduced two important digital shifts. The first is it has made distance irrelevant, and the second is it has become very good at introducing people with similar interests, in particular, buyers and sellers. Now I'm going to introduce another economist, but one a bit more positive than the Marxist economist, which is Thomas Friedman. And he said, because of the internet, the world is flat. By which he meant that the world of commerce was a level playing field because every single company had access to the same opportunity. And he was right. The internet has established a global marketplace that everyone has access to. However, we don't think the world is always going to be flat. In fact, we see a future where it's quite spiky. Whilst the global connectedness of the marketplace has changed who we buy from, the next wave of digital disruption will change how products are produced. And this is because, as everyday objects are increasingly connected to the internet, the vast network of resulting sensors will collect more data on our lives and preferences. The new digital economy will therefore favour those enterprises that can harness this information, and that may be a much smaller group of enterprises. But let me break this down with a couple of examples of how we think that you're going to wake up one morning in 5 years' time and reflect on two things. The first is things are now connected that 5 years ago you didn't think needed to be. And the second is that you personalize products in the way that 5 years ago you didn't think needed to be. And I'm going to give a couple of personal examples of this in action. When I attended MWC this year, I stumbled across a stall with, and I kid you not, a connected mousetrap. A connected mousetrap alerts the user that it's gone off and it needs to be reset. Quite logical. When you sit back and think about it, yeah, I can see how that works. But what struck me is that I think that we can say when a technology reaches the vermin market and changes the design of a product that's been left untouched for hundreds of years, then we know IoT has really arrived. But this is only one example of how we expect connectivity to proliferate. Your car, your fridge, your dishwasher, your toothbrush, your hairdryer will all be connected. In fact, we think intelligence will eventually creep into everything. So as much as electricity flows through these products today, so too in future will intelligence. And it's the data from these products that will then be used to personalize them. And to give you an example of that, I wanted to share my example of my experience with Hue lights. When I first bought my lights, I could get them to turn on and off at certain times of the day. For example, when the International Space Station flew over my house, I could get them to turn blue when it rained outside. But these are features I guarantee you won't use more than once. Quite surprisingly, though, what's happened to me is I have developed an immensely sensitive taste to lighting. To me, genuinely, lighting was a binary affair. They were either on or off in a colour either described as white. But I have now got lightings to read, to eat, to watch films. And it's quite odd. I now have a very intense desire to personalise a product that I previously did not have and had not imagined. My point is that in future we will all personalise products that today we see as offering a binary choice. And this is why we think that tomorrow's Fortune 500 companies won't be those with just the best product design, but those with the richest customer data sets and systems. And we see this as really the next generation of commerce, because technology is being applied to personalized products on a massive scale. And we've already started seeing the first examples of this. We've spoken to detergent companies that want to customize their products based on analyzing your washing machine cycles. We've talked to pharmaceutical companies that want to customize drugs based on data gathered from internal sensors called internables. And we've even talked to service providers who want to customize their bundles based on analyzing your network usage. But perhaps the most audacious example is that this year, Amazon filed a patent for the custom manufacture of clothes. With your millimeter-accurate measurements held online, Amazon will tailor clothing just for you, on demand. As someone that's very tall, I'm delighted to say the future is personalized tailoring for all. But the consequences of these changes goes beyond products and services and has the potential of disrupting companies and even perhaps entire industries. And one company that we think is changing very quickly for the better is Centrica. Centrica's £10 billion energy business is not growing. but it is growing through its £300 million smart home business, Hive. Already today, it manages 35,000 boilers online, but Hive isn't just about boilers, because it also sells a number of smart devices, including lights and plugs and other sensors. Astonishingly, it has already sold 1 million smart devices, and as you can see here, on average, customers have 1.6 devices per hub, which is such an achievement over such a short period of time, and I can't think of any telco that's achieved anything like that over the same period. Where we and Centrica are heading is towards auto-replenishment and preventative fault maintenance. So in homes with intelligence devices, companies such as Hive will monitor their performance, and where that your appliances are not performing at their absolute optimum, you'll be asked whether you'd like to schedule a repair for a fault that you didn't know you had. Further, if your intelligence device detects that you're running out of a product, it will simply reorder it for you. So there are examples of auto-replenishment in printer cartridges, in water filters, and as you can see here, there's a dog bowl company in the States called Ovum that will reorder your dog's dog food when you're running low. But we face a significant barrier to all of this. All of this may just be fantasy. And that barrier is that today, the smart home is not simple. Already, I have a bridge for my Hive, I have a bridge for my Hue, and I have a bridge for my Sonos, all of which I can control with their independent apps. Am I really going to add another bridge for my fridge, another bridge for my freezer or dishwasher? I don't think so. You see, the smart home will not be a success unless we make it really simple. And I say that because Ovum's research has found that there's a small number of early adopters, about 20% of consumers, that are prepared to deal with complexity. But the vast majority, 50%, will only adopt a technology if it's simple. And it seems to me that whilst we've got all these things working in isolation, we don't have a compelling solution, because every time we add a technology to the home, we only add complexity. We have to find a way, as an industry, to make this simple and to provide an integrated experience. And this is why we think there's a new role for the service provider to help bring it all together. And a really good example of this is in terms of the two ways that you can do it, which are you can provide services on the router, or you can provide intelligence in the network. And a good example of virtual services on the router is Deutsche Telekom's Quivicon. Through a single interface, Quivicon provides the user access to over 40 smart home services. And because the services are on the router, there's no need for additional bridges or apps here. And of course, these routers are more expensive, but our research shows that consumers are happy to pay small incremental monthly fees for smart home and advanced networking services. In terms of intelligence in the network, a good example of that is Telefónica's fourth platform, which it launched this year at MWC. The fourth platform is designed to act as an intelligent hub that brings together Telefónica's services with the internet. So, for example, the network integrates with Alexa. But it's in this way that Telefónica acts as an intelligent, personalized federator of services between it, the home, the internet, and the extended digital services community. In other words, the future network will be open and it will intelligently hand off services to third parties. And there are lots of other telcos that are starting to open up this strategy, and some of the ones that are working on this strategy are listed there. So I think, perhaps unsurprisingly, we agree with what the speakers have been saying today in terms of the acceleration of technology and industry change. The internet is almost certainly going to deliver new capabilities and new services which will change the way that business is done. But in our minds, these events bring together an opportunity for the service provider to play a new role, of bringing it together, of being the intelligent federator, and of being the intelligent personal data guardian. But the way that we pursue this opportunity will not be uniform across the industry. And we think there are three key questions that will be overarchingly driving your strategy. And these are, what is the new customer experience that you are looking to execute? How can you make your clients, not make them, how can you help them transition to the automation and personalizations of services that they're going to have to pursue? And what is your role in terms of adding intelligence, either in the home or the workplace or the network? So there are three things that I'd really like you to do today. The first is, please download our research agenda, which I hope goes some way to answering the questions that I pose at the end there. So that's the first thing to do. The second thing to do before you head into lunch is please go and look at what the team's done with Forecaster. That product is a result of many, many hours, many, many months of work, and is really a fantastic achievement. And if you love data, please go and look at what that team has done. And also, please spend some time with some of the consultants that are sitting there on the consulting desk